The massive alien ship appeared over New York without warning. Its smooth silver surface reflected the morning sunlight, casting strange shadows over the city below. The world held its breath, waiting to see if this would be humanity's finest moment or its last. Inside the United Nations building, Captain James Miller adjusted his uniform for the 10th time. As the head of Earth's Defense Force, he had trained for many scenarios, but first contact wasn't one of them. The room around him buzzed with nervous energy as world leaders and military officials whispered among themselves. The doors opened with a soft hiss. 3 tall figures walked in, their blue-tinted skin and elaborate robes marking them as something definitely not human. The tallest one, who introduced himself as High Counselor Drake, smiled in a way that seemed almost too human. "People of Earth," Drake spoke in perfect English, his translator device glowing softly at his throat. "We welcome you to the greater galactic community. We are the Galactic Council, overseers of 500 civilizations across 3,000 worlds." Miller watched as the aliens' eyes moved across the room, pausing briefly on the security personnel and their standard-issue rifles. Was that amusement in those strange, silver eyes? "We have been watching your progress," Drake continued. "Your species shows great promise. However," he paused, his smile growing wider, "there are certain standards that must be met for full membership." One of Drake's assistants stepped forward, holding what looked like a small silver tube. With a flick of his wrist, the tube expanded into an elegant weapon. "This is current Council standard. Pure energy-based weaponry. Clean, precise, and civilized." Miller felt his face grow hot as Drake's eyes settled on the rifle at his side. "Your projectile weapons are..." Drake seemed to search for the right word. "Quaint, like something from a museum of primitive cultures." The room erupted in murmurs. Miller stepped forward, his voice steady despite his rising anger. "Our weapons have served us well, Counselor. They're reliable, effective, and get the job done." Drake's assistant made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Getting the job done. Your weapons still use explosive chemicals to propel small pieces of metal. We haven't used such methods in 10,000 years." "Nevertheless," Miller started, but Drake raised a hand to silence him. "Please, Captain. We mean no offense. It's just that." Drake gestured to one of his companions, who activated a holographic display. It showed various human weapons, from handguns to artillery pieces. "These are more suited to a species just discovering gunpowder, not one ready to join galactic society." Miller noticed something in the alien's tone. Not just condescension, but genuine amusement. These advanced beings found humanity's weapons funny, like adults looking at children playing with toy guns. "The Council proposes this," Drake announced to the room. "We will provide Earth with modern energy weapon technology. In return, you will phase out these outdated projectile weapons. This is non-negotiable for full membership status." The Secretary General leaned forward. "And if we refuse?" Drake's smile never wavered. "Then Earth remains isolated. No trade, no cultural exchange, no access to faster-than-light travel. The galaxy is a dangerous place, friends. You need our protection, our technology, our guidance." Miller's hand tightened on his rifle. Something about this felt wrong. Sure, energy weapons looked impressive, but there was a reason humanity had stuck with projectile weapons for centuries. They worked. They were reliable. And something in his gut told him that looking down on any weapon was a dangerous mistake. "We'll need time to discuss this," the Secretary General said carefully. "Of course," Drake replied. "You have 1 Earth month to begin the transition. We look forward to helping humanity join the modern galactic age." His eyes fell one last time on Miller's rifle, and that small, amused smile returned. "And Captain, perhaps we can find a nice museum for that interesting antique you're carrying." As the aliens left the room, Miller stood his ground, his mind racing. The Galactic Council might be laughing now, but something told him they were making a serious mistake. What they saw as primitive, he saw as proven. and he had a feeling they'd learn the difference sooner rather than later. Earth had just been pulled into a galactic community that thought it knew everything about warfare. Miller had a strong feeling they were about to learn otherwise. 2 weeks after the first contact, the Earth Defense Force's main testing facility buzzed with activity. Military Advisor Gray from the Galactic Council stood in the observation room, his silver eyes fixed on the array of human weapons laid out on the table before him. His expression showed the same amusement that had become all too familiar to the humans. Lieutenant Anna Wells watched as the alien picked up an assault rifle, holding it like it might bite him. Behind her, Captain Miller leaned against the wall, his face carefully neutral. They had spent the last 3 hours watching Gray dismiss every weapon they showed him. Fascinating, Gray said, though his tone suggested otherwise. You still use brass casings for your ammunition, and this firing mechanism. He shook his head. We abandoned such designs before your species discovered electricity. Wells stepped forward. Would you like to see it in action, Advisor Gray? That won't be necessary. Gray placed the rifle back on the table. Our scans tell us everything. The projectile velocity, the impact force, all quite insufficient against modern defenses. Miller pushed himself off the wall. With all due respect, Advisor, scans don't tell the whole story. Gray pulled out a small silver sphere from his robes. With a gentle toss, it floated in the air, projecting a holographic display. These are the results of our analysis. Your most powerful rifle round would be stopped by even our most basic personal shields. The hologram showed a bullet hitting an energy barrier and disintegrating. Wells noticed something odd about the simulation, but before she could speak, Gray continued. Look here, he expanded the image. Your projectiles rely on kinetic energy. Primitive. Our shields convert energy attacks into harmless light. That's why the entire galaxy uses energy weapons. They can be amplified to overcome shields. But these, he waved at the human weapons. These would barely register. Miller and Wells exchanged glances. They had both seen the flaw in the alien's logic, but Miller's slight headshake told Wells to wait. Let me demonstrate our technology, Gray said. He pulled out another device, and suddenly a shimmering blue field surrounded him. This is our basic civilian shield, standard issue across Council space. He smiled that now familiar condescending smile. Feel free to examine it. Wells picked up a pen from the nearby desk and tossed it at Gray. The pen bounced off the shield with a soft sparkle of light. You see, Gray looked pleased. Even simple objects are repelled. Now, imagine our military-grade shields. Miller stepped forward. Advisor Gray, we appreciate the demonstration, but in the spirit of thorough assessment, would you be willing to participate in a practical test? Gray's expression shifted slightly. What kind of test? We have a firing range downstairs, completely secure. You can wear your shield, and we can show you exactly what our weapons can do. For the first time, Gray looked slightly uncertain. I don't see the point. Our simulations are just simulations, Wells finished. On Earth, we believe in practical testing. Unless, she paused, choosing her words carefully, unless you're not confident in your shield technology. That did it. Gray's pride won over his caution. Very well. A brief demonstration, though I warn you, it will only prove what I've been saying. As they walked to the range, Wells fell in step beside Miller. Did you see it? She whispered. Miller nodded slightly. Their simulations assume our rounds are energy-based. They never actually tested physical projectiles. Their shields convert energy to light, Wells continued. But kinetic energy isn't the same thing, Miller finished. Let's see how confident our friend remains after a real demonstration. The firing range was empty except for a few technicians. Gray stood at the far end, his shield humming softly around him. He looked almost bored as Wells picked up a standard-issue pistol. Last chance to back out, Miller called out. Gray actually laughed. Please, Captain. This is becoming embarrassing. Fire your primitive weapon. Let's get this over with. Wells loaded the pistol, her movements deliberate and precise. The alien's shield sparkled in the range lights, its bearer standing confidently behind its supposed protection. In a few moments, decades of galactic assumptions about warfare were about to be challenged. "Ready when you are, advisor," Wells said, raising the pistol. "Let's see what primitive really means." The firing range fell silent. Advisor Gray stood at the far end, his shield glowing with a soft blue light. Lieutenant Wells held her pistol steady, and Captain Miller watched from behind the safety glass, his eyes fixed on the scene before him. "Whenever you're ready, Lieutenant," Gray called out, his voice carrying that now familiar tone of amusement. "Though I should warn you, this shield can withstand impacts from ship's weaponry." Wells took a deep breath. "Starting with standard ammunition," she announced. She squeezed the trigger. The crack of the pistol echoed through the range. What happened next made everyone freeze. The bullet went straight through the shield like it wasn't even there. It hit the reinforced wall behind Gray, leaving a small mark. The alien stumbled backward, his silver eyes wide with shock. "Impossible." Gray's voice had lost all its previous confidence. "Fire again." Wells complied. 3 more shots. 3 more times the bullets passed through the shield, as if it were nothing but air. Gray's face had turned a pale shade of blue. "There must be something wrong with the shield," he said, checking the device on his wrist. "The power readings are normal, but—" Miller stepped into the range. "Nothing's wrong with your shield, advisor. It's working exactly as designed." He picked up one of the spent bullet casings from the floor. "Your shields stop energy weapons, but our bullets, they're just pieces of metal, moving really fast." Gray's hands were shaking slightly. "But the simulations were wrong," Wells finished. "Your people have been using energy weapons so long, you forgot about basic physics. Your shields convert energy attacks into light, but they can't stop physical objects moving at high speed." The alien's composure cracked further. "Surely our military-grade shields." Miller nodded to Wells. She put down the pistol and picked up an assault rifle. "Military-grade shield demonstration authorized," a computerized voice announced. Gray fumbled with his wrist device, and his shield changed color from blue to deep purple. "This is our strongest personal shield technology," Gray said, but his voice lacked its earlier certainty. "Used by our most elite troops." Wells aimed carefully. The rifle barked 3 times. The bullets passed through the advanced shield just as easily as they had through the basic one. Gray actually jumped this time. "Would you like to see what our sniper rifles can do?" Miller asked. "Or perhaps some of our heavier weapons?" That won't be necessary," Gray stammered. He deactivated his shield, his hands still trembling. "This changes everything. Our entire defense doctrine is based on stopping the wrong kind of weapons," Miller finished. "You've spent thousands of years preparing for energy weapon attacks, but sometimes the old ways work best." Gray walked to the table where the human weapons lay. This time, he handled them with respect, almost reverence. "All our ships, our bases, our troops, they're all protected against energy weapons, but not against good old-fashioned bullets," Wells said. She ejected the rifle's magazine and set the weapon down. "Pretty simple, really." The alien picked up a bullet, studying it closely. "Simple," he repeated. "We made everything so complex, so advanced, we missed the simple solution." He looked up at Miller. "The Council needs to know about this immediately." "That's why we agreed to this demonstration," Miller said. "Your shields are impressive, advisor. Against energy weapons, they're probably unbeatable. But war isn't about having the most advanced technology. It's about using what works." Gray nodded slowly. "The pirates in the outer systems, they've been attacking our colonies with increasing success. We thought they'd developed some new energy weapon technology." But he trailed off, realization dawning on his face. "They probably figured out the same thing we just showed you," Wells said. The alien straightened up, his professional demeanor returning, but now without the condescension. "Captain Miller, Lieutenant Wells, I need to send an urgent message to the Council. And," he paused, looking at the weapons on the table, "I believe we need to seriously reconsider our position on Earth's military technology." As Gray hurried from the range, Miller picked up one of the rifles. "Think they'll start taking us seriously now?" he asked Wells. She smiled, collecting the spent casings from the floor. "They'd better. Because if the pirates have figured this out." "Then the galaxy just got a lot more interesting," Miller finished. The sound of Gray's hurried footsteps echoed down the corridor, carrying with them the death of the Council's complacency about humanity's primitive weapons. The emergency council meeting room aboard the alien ship hummed with tense energy. High Counselor Drake stood at the center of the circular chamber, his face tight with concern as he watched the video replay of the firing range demonstration for the third time. On the massive holographic display, bullets passed through their most advanced shields again and again. The recording ended with Advisor Gray's shaken expression, now burned into the memory of every council member present. "This is impossible," one of the council members muttered. "Our shields have protected us for 10,000 years." Captain Miller and Lieutenant Wells stood quietly at one side of the room, watching the aliens come to terms with their new reality. The council had demanded their presence for this emergency session, though the humans noticed they were no longer being treated with condescension. Drake turned to face the room. "Advisor Gray, explain this failure to me now." Gray stepped forward, his earlier confidence replaced by grim professionalism. "It's not exactly a failure, High Counselor. Our shields work perfectly against energy weapons." He gestured to the human officers. "But their projectile weapons operate on different principles entirely." "Speak plainly," Drake commanded. Miller stepped forward. "May I?" When Drake nodded, he picked up one of the bullets from the display table. "This is simple physics. Your shields are designed to catch energy blasts and convert them to harmless light. But our bullets don't use energy beams. They're just small pieces of metal, moving very fast. Like throwing a rock," Wells added. "Your shields stop laser beams, plasma bolts, and energy pulses. But can they stop a thrown rock?" The council chamber fell silent as understanding dawned on their faces. "All our defensive technology," another council member spoke up, "all our military doctrine, it's based on energy weapon attacks." "And the pirates?" Drake asked sharply. "The recent attacks." Gray brought up another holographic display, showing recent battle reports. "We've analyzed the attack patterns. The pirates aren't using some new kind of energy weapon. They're using," he paused, looking at the humans, "they're using projectile weapons, probably reverse-engineered from studying less advanced species." The room erupted in worried murmurs. Drake raised his hand for silence. "How many of our ships are vulnerable?" he asked. "All of them," Gray replied quietly. "Every ship, every base, every personal shield. They're all optimized to stop energy weapons against physical projectiles moving at high velocity." He gestured at the replay of the firing range test. Miller watched as the mighty Galactic Council, masters of 1,000 worlds, came to terms with the fact that their most basic assumptions about warfare were wrong. "We've spent centuries making our shields stronger and stronger against energy weapons," one council scientist spoke up. "We became so focused on stopping bigger and more powerful energy beams, we forgot about simpler methods." "Not forgot," Wells corrected. "You dismissed them, just like you dismissed our weapons as primitive." Drake turned to Miller. "Can these bullets be stopped?" Miller nodded. "Physical armor. Simple metal plates, composite materials. Things your ships probably haven't used in thousands of years because they weren't needed against energy weapons. So we would need to redesign our entire defense system," Gray said. "Ships, stations, personal armor, everything." "Or," Drake said slowly, looking at the humans with new respect, "we could learn from those we too quickly judged as primitive." Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. A holographic screen appeared, showing a distress call from a council colony 20 light-years away. Pirates. The colony leader's voice cracked with static. They've breached our shields somehow. Our weapons aren't. They're using some kind of solid projectiles. Please send. The transmission cut off. Drake looked at Miller, and for the first time, there was no trace of superiority in his expression. Captain Miller, how quickly can Earth forces respond to a pirate attack? Miller straightened. We have ships ready to launch within the hour. With your permission, we can show you exactly what our primitive weapons can do. Permission granted, Drake said immediately. And Captain, I believe the Council owes humanity an apology. We've been fools. As Miller and Wells hurried out to prepare their forces, they heard Drake addressing the Council. Send word to all our worlds. The age of energy weapons supremacy is over. It's time to learn some old lessons about warfare. Behind them, the Council chamber buzzed with urgent activity as the galaxy's most advanced civilization prepared to relearn the basics of combat from the very species they had laughed at just days before. The colony world of Haven burned. From the bridge of the Earth Defense Force ship Thunder, Captain Miller watched as pirate vessels circled the main settlement like hungry wolves. Their ships were ugly, modified Council vessels bristling with crude but effective projectile weapons. Council defense forces are in full retreat, Lieutenant Wells reported from her tactical station. Their shields are useless against the pirates' guns. Colony reports heavy damage to the main city. Miller nodded grimly. The view screen showed Council ships, their once proud energy shields flickering uselessly as solid shells tore through them. Decades of technological superiority were being shattered by simple physics. Status of our forces, Miller asked. 4 Earth ships ready, sir, all armed with conventional weapons. The Council flagship is standing by, but Wells paused. They're requesting permission to observe. They want to learn. Through the viewport, Miller could see the massive Council flagship holding position. High Counselor Drake had insisted on watching humanity's response to this crisis. Now was the time to show them what primitive weapons could do. All ships, combat formation, Miller ordered. Load armor-piercing rounds. These pirates want to play with bullets. Let's show them who invented them. The Earth ships moved forward in perfect formation. They were smaller than Council vessels, but covered in thick armor plating instead of energy shields. Each one carried batteries of railguns, missile pods, and traditional naval cannons modified for space warfare. Pirates are noticing us, Wells reported. They're turning to engage. 10 ships, spreading out. The pirate leader's voice crackled over the comm system. Well, more Council sheep to slaughter. The voice paused. Wait, those ships look different. This is Captain James Miller of the Earth Defense Force. Miller responded calmly. In the name of the Galactic Council, you are ordered to stand down. Laughter filled the channel. Earth. Those primitives the Council just found. This should be entertaining. All ships, destroy these newcomers. The pirate fleet opened fire. Solid shells and crude projectiles screamed toward the Earth ships. All ships, return fire, Miller commanded. Show them how the primitives fight. The space between the fleets erupted in fire. Where Council ships would have relied on precise energy beams, the Earth vessels unleashed a storm of metal and explosives. Railguns accelerated chunks of metal to incredible speeds. Missiles streaked through space, their guidance systems tracking individual targets. Direct hits on 3 pirate vessels. Wells called out. Their shields are worthless against our weapons, just like in the demonstrations. 2 ships disabled, 1 breaking apart. The pirates tried to regroup, but they faced an enemy that had spent centuries perfecting the art of projectile warfare. Their crude copies of human weapons met the refined originals, and they found themselves desperately outmatched. They're trying to run, Wells reported. 2 more ships hit. Their formation is breaking. Miller opened the comm channel again. This is your final warning. Surrender or be destroyed. The pirate leader's voice had lost its mockery. What? What are you? Those weapons. They're like ours, but better. We're the primitives who never forgot the basics of warfare, Miller replied. Stand down now. On the view screen, the remaining pirate ships cut their engines. Behind them, the Council flagship moved forward, its crew witnessing a type of space combat they hadn't seen in millennia. Captain Miller, Drake's voice came through clear and respectful. The Council, we are in your debt. Please secure the pirates. We have much to learn from Earth's military expertise. As Earth forces moved to capture the surrendering pirates, Miller watched the Council ships approaching the colony. Their once mighty energy weapons and impenetrable shields didn't seem so impressive now. Sir, Wells said quietly, the colony governor is requesting permission to thank us in person. And she smiled slightly. Several Council military commanders are requesting immediate information about Earth's weapon designs. Miller nodded. Tell them we'll be happy to teach. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. The stars shone steadily as Earth ships secured the area, their solid armor gleaming. Below them, Haven's fires were being extinguished, and in the Council flagship, the leaders of 1,000 worlds prepared to learn warfare all over again, from the very people they had dismissed as primitive just days before. The galaxy was changing, one bullet at a time. 3 days after the battle at Haven, the main Council military academy buzzed with unusual activity. Captain Miller stood before a room full of alien officers, all watching intently as he assembled a simple rifle on the table before him. This, he held up the weapon, is where we begin. Before energy weapons, before shields, this was how warfare worked. And as we've seen, sometimes the old ways work best. Lieutenant Wells operated the display screen, showing diagrams of human weapons. The Council officers, once so proud and dismissive, now took careful notes. In the front row, High Counselor Drake and Advisor Gray watched with rapt attention. Sir, one alien officer raised his hand. Our reports show the pirates had similar weapons. Why were yours so much more effective? Miller smiled. Because they copied the idea, but not the centuries of development behind it. Show them, Lieutenant. Wells brought up footage from the Haven battle. The room watched as Earth ships executed perfect attack formations, their guns firing in coordinated patterns that left no escape route for the pirates. You see, Miller continued, it's not just about having guns. It's about knowing how to use them. Tactics, strategy, things that can't be copied quickly. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the academy. Drake's communicator lit up with urgent messages. Multiple pirate fleets detected, he announced, his voice tense. They're attacking 3 colonies at once, larger forces this time, all armed with projectile weapons. Miller and Wells exchanged glances. This was the real test, not just one battle, but a coordinated response to multiple threats. Captain Miller, Drake turned to him. We need your help again. But our forces, they're not ready. They haven't learned enough yet. Then they'll learn in combat, Miller replied. He activated his own communicator. All Earth Defense Force ships, battle stations. Lieutenant Wells, Battle Plan Delta 3. Within minutes, they were aboard the Thunder, leading a mixed fleet of Earth and Council ships. The Council vessels had been hastily fitted with basic armor plates, following human designs. Their crews had received crash courses in projectile combat, but they were still novices. Multiple pirate ships detected ahead. Wells reported from her station. They've improved their weapons. Better targeting systems, heavier guns. Miller nodded, but they still don't understand the fundamentals. All ships, combat formation. Council vessels, follow our lead exactly. The space ahead filled with enemy ships, their weapons bristling. Their leader's voice came over the comm system, confident and mocking. Back for more, Earth ships. We've upgraded since Haven. You're not the only ones who can play with bullets now. Miller's response was calm. All ships, Fire Pattern Alpha. Show them the difference between having guns and knowing how to use them. What followed was a lesson in warfare that the galaxy would never forget. Earth ships moved in intricate patterns, their guns firing in coordinated salvos that overwhelmed the pirates' defenses. Council ships, following their lead, began to understand the dance of projectile combat. Enemy ships breaking formation. Wells called out. They're trying to regroup, but their tactics are amateur. They don't understand cover fire or concentrated barrages. Miller watched as the pirates' attempt at copying human warfare fell apart under the pressure of centuries of tactical development. Their ships, while better armed than at Haven, still moved like energy weapon vessels, too direct, too predictable. All Council ships, Miller ordered, execute flanking maneuver beta, just like we practiced. To his satisfaction, the alien vessels moved perfectly, cutting off the pirates' retreat. Caught between experienced Earth forces and quickly learning Council ships, the pirate fleet began to crumble. Enemy vessels surrendering, Wells reported, unable to keep the pride from her voice. All 3 battle zones report similar results. The pirates didn't expect coordinated resistance. On the command channel, Drake's voice was filled with awe. Captain Miller, I'm beginning to understand. It's not the weapons themselves, is it? It's how you use them. The tactics, the strategies. Centuries of development, Miller confirmed. You can copy a gun, but you can't copy experience. As the combined fleet secured their prisoners, Miller watched the Council ships practicing their new maneuvers. They were learning quickly, adapting centuries-old human military doctrine to space warfare. The galaxy was changing, and humanity, once dismissed as primitive, was now its teacher. 1 month after the final pirate battles, Earth's delegation stood in the Grand Council chamber. Captain Miller and Lieutenant Wells watched as thousands of alien representatives filled the massive circular room. The chamber, once a place where humans were mocked, now hummed with respectful whispers. High Counselor Drake stood at the central podium, his formal robes gleaming under the star-like lights above. Behind him, a massive display showed images that would have been unthinkable just months ago. Council shipyards building vessels with physical armor, alien soldiers training with ballistic weapons, and joint human-alien military exercises. Members of the Galactic Council, Drake's voice carried across the chamber. We gather today to correct a grave mistake. 1 month ago, we laughed at humanity's primitive weapons. We dismissed thousands of years of their military development as outdated and worthless. He paused, looking directly at the Earth delegation. We were wrong. The chamber fell silent. In all its history, the Council had never admitted such a mistake. Captain Miller, Drake continued, please step forward. Miller walked to the podium, remembering the first time he had stood there, when the Council had demanded Earth give up its outdated weapons. Now the same Council members watched him with deep respect. Thanks to Earth's military expertise, the pirate threat has been eliminated, Drake announced. But more importantly, humanity has taught us a valuable lesson about wisdom, humility, and the danger of believing too much in our own superiority. The main display changed, showing footage from the recent battles. Earth ships moved with deadly grace, their projectile weapons proving that sometimes the old ways were the best ways. Therefore, Drake raised his voice. The Council proposes 3 resolutions. First, Earth will be granted full membership in the Galactic Council, with all rights and privileges. Applause filled the chamber. Miller saw Wells smile slightly at their station. Second, we will establish the Earth Military Academy as the primary training center for all Council forces. Human instructors will teach our personnel the art of warfare, both old and new. More applause, louder this time. In the audience, Miller spotted Advisor Gray, who nodded respectfully. The alien who had once laughed at human weapons now wore a pistol of Earth design at his hip. And finally, Drake's voice became solemn. The Council formally apologizes to humanity. We forgot that progress doesn't always mean abandoning the past. Sometimes it means understanding why traditional methods endured. Drake turned to Miller. Captain, Earth's weapons weren't primitive. They were proven, tested by time and refined by experience. While we chased more and more advanced energy weapons, you perfected the basics of warfare. We could have learned from you immediately, but our pride got in the way. Miller stepped to the podium. The chamber quieted, waiting for his response. High Counselor, members of the Council, he began, Earth accepts your apology. But more importantly, we accept your friendship. Together, we can combine the best of both our technologies. Your energy weapons and our projectile weapons. Your shields and our armor. Not because one is better than the other, but because both have their place. He gestured to the display, which now showed new hybrid weapons being tested, combinations of human and alien technology. The pirates thought they could copy our weapons and win, Miller continued. They forgot that weapons are tools. It's experience, strategy, and wisdom that win battles. These are the real lessons Earth can teach. Drake nodded, and we are ready to learn. He turned back to the assembly. Let the record show. The day we laughed at human guns was the day we proved our own foolishness. But today marks a new beginning. Together, we will be stronger. The chamber erupted in cheers. As Miller returned to his place beside Wells, he saw the future taking shape. Council ships now carried both energy weapons and traditional guns. Alien soldiers trained in both new and old combat techniques. Two military traditions, once separated by pride and prejudice, were becoming one. You know what the funny thing is? Wells said quietly as they watched the celebration. All this started because they thought our weapons were jokes. Miller smiled. Sometimes the best lessons start with laughter and end with respect. Above them, the Great Seal of the Council was being modified. Added to its ancient symbols was a new image, a simple projectile weapon, representing the day the galaxy learned that primitive didn't mean ineffective, and that wisdom could come from the most unexpected places. The galaxy had laughed at human guns until they'd fired. Now, it would never laugh at humanity again.